Hey there, Gary Parrish. Welcome back. CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, leaky black. The Eye on College Basketball Podcast is presented by Jersey Mike's, a sub above. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. And I want to start with one of the two top 10 matchups on the schedule this weekend, specifically number 8 Iowa State at number 5 Houston, Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern. That's when it's tipping. Kelvin Sampson's Cougars enter with a Big 12 record of 14-1, which represents a 2-game lead in the loss column over Arizona in the league standings. So barring a surprise, Houston is about to win a second straight outright Big 12 championship, probably by multiple games. Norlander, I know you talked to Kelvin earlier in the week. You wrote about him in the court report. What was your main takeaway from the conversation you had with Houston's future Naismith Memorial Hall of Famer?
Do we think that he is going to get there, by the way,
Yes.
on that question? We
We
do
think
think.
he should.
I almost wonder, because I wrote it in the story. I think so as well, but I almost wonder if he needs a national title in order to do it. I don't know. Another Final Four would certainly go a long way, and hell, this team might wind up getting there. And we don't need to totally – I didn't mean to swerve us right immediately off the road here. Good to see you, GP. Good morning. Thanks to KB for holding it down Wednesday when I was traveling. I think probably, but I sometimes, getting at least one national title really gets a coach over the hump, if you will. And I just, as you brought it up, I wonder out loud if he might.
Yeah, I guess it's debatable. I don't think it should be. If you tell me the Hall of Fame is for the greatest people who have ever contributed to the sport of basketball, I will tell you Kelvin Sampson belongs in that Hall of Fame. Yeah.
I wound up talking to him. I was going to do just a quick little, hey, we're coming up on the 17th anniversary of Indiana and Kelvin Sampson splitting, and here's how these two folks have gone in different directions since, and then wound up getting him on the phone, and then he kind of really opened up about just going to the NBA and took me through that day of leaving Indiana. I think technically it was a resignation, but his quote to me was, I was fired at 11:30, and by 3 o'clock I had another job, and that job was because of Greg Popovich. So we went into all of that, and understandably so. Like he is a great coach, but in his eyes, like Houston would not be doing what it's doing, and he wouldn't be where he is if not for going to the NBA. And he said, I actually thought I'd never go back to college basketball. I wanted to be an NBA head coach. I had multiple interviews. He was an interim for a little bit there when Kevin McHale had to take a leave of absence. And he thought that that's what he wanted to do and what he would eventually do. But then, as I wrote in the story, the last time he ever talked to his father was in February of 2014. And in that conversation, he didn't know at the time it would be the last time that he was going to talk to his dad, but it happened to be the last time he talked to his dad. And in that conversation, his father had mentioned, just kind of plainly, bluntly, just, hey, never forget you're a college coach. And lo and behold, a couple months later, there were opportunities. He had paid his penance for an Indiana situation that, to be fair, it was extremely messy. We talked about that on the pod before, and the rule breaking that was happening there, and kind of the state of the program, even though he was winning, was not good. He decided, I'm going to come back. Now he's at Houston, and they've just it's a testament to how great he is, that people don't no longer see Houston for what it was, and it was a terrible job with a terrible home environment, a terrible home arena, just the dregs of Division I. At the multi-bid level, I guess you would define it as, were at the time when Houston was in the league that it was in. And now, this game against Iowa State is a big one. And I actually, Iowa State's got to play it on the road, but TJ Otzelberger's team has gotten it back together. So I actually think this is a really, really tasty matchup on a really, really good weekend. We'll get to all the games, but here we are 17 years later. Indiana's about to hire another coach. It just can't quite get it rolling. Maybe the next one will be the guy. And I'm not saying that it would have been, all roses and he, Sampson would have been winning national championships at Indiana. I don't know, but I do know that since that sever happened, Indiana's gone in one direction. Sampson has gone in another. And as we agree, he seems to be tracking toward the Hall of Fame. And I do think whether it's this year, I think he's got another Final Four in him. Like it very well could be this team, but I don't think he retires without at least making at least one more Final Four, and this team is well equipped to do so.
He could have won a national championship the year that he got fired at Indiana. I'm not saying that he would have. Kansas went on to win that one, but that team was 22-4 when he was pushed out. And I think we've talked about this before, but Kelvin's removal at Indiana feels a lot like Bruce Pearl's removal at Tennessee, in the sense that at the time, in the moment, it felt like something that had to happen. It just did, as silly as it seems all these years later. Like in the moment, there wasn't really anybody out there arguing with any sort of real platform that you can't do this if you're Indiana, or you can't do this if you're Tennessee, as it pertains to Bruce. It was almost like you have to do this. With the benefit of hindsight, it all seems ridiculous. Like the idea that Kelvin Sampson was removed as a basketball coach at Indiana over what was essentially excessive phone calls and text messages and stuff. And then Bruce, for everybody knows that story. Again, in the moment,
Bruce also lied to the NCAA, so that's what really got him. So I mean,
okay, that's accurate. With the benefit of hindsight, given everything else we know about the sport, it seems wild that you felt compelled to have to lie about a cookout at your house that ultimately cost you your job at Tennessee. Either way, I'm with you. I think he's got another Final Four in him, if only because what he has shown us since he got Houston going, and it wasn't like an immediate thing. It took, multiple years. But what he has shown us since he got Houston going is that it ain't going nowhere. Regardless of what league you put it in, regardless of what first-team All-American you take off the roster, there are other programs and other coaches where they seem very reliant on the next recruiting class, the next transfer portal class. And obviously Houston is as well. But what we have learned really over about a 7-year stretch now is that it does not matter. Just let Kelvin Sampson run the basketball program and they're going to be good. But what if they lose Jamal Shead? I guess they'll still be in contention for a 1 seed. Well, what if they lose Jarris Watt? Well, I guess but what if they don't get another 5-star prospect? Well, I guess they'll still be winning a conference championship. So like when you are rock solid, regardless of the circumstances, and by rock solid, I mean elite, I'm just going to assume it's going to continue. You'll have to show me that it's not before I'll believe that it's not. And yeah, he's got another Final Four in him, and it could come, it could come this season.
It could. It's just highly impressive. The way that it truly is the way that he runs his program, and just watching. I never get tired of watching his teams play, even though it is so tiring to envision what it must be like to play his teams. And they're doing it again. Now this team is intriguing in particular because I talked to Kelvin Sampson, Kelvin's son, earlier this week as well. And he just said we just haven't had the amount of guys on a roster that are capable of hitting a bucket, shooting from deep, altogether, like this many. We've never had this, so that's what makes this Houston team in particular pretty dangerous, pretty dynamic. It's only got one loss in overtime, the Texas Tech one from 3 weeks back there, since November 30th. That's the only loss there. Houston got off to a 4-3 start, just kind of nondescript. They got beat twice at the Players Era Invitational in November, and since then they've rolled. Now the schedule here down the stretch is Iowa State on Saturday, at Texas Tech for the 2-day turnaround, at Texas Tech on Monday. So, a loss in the next 2 games, frankly, would not be surprising whatsoever. Those are 2 top 10 KenPom teams right now. And then home to Cincy, home to Kansas, at Baylor to wrap the season. We'll see if that winds up being a fairly desperate game for Baylor in terms of its NCAA tournament standings when Houston and the Bears meet on Saturday, March 8th. But this Iowa State game, I think it's got really fun potential to be one of the best on a weekend with a lot of matchups going in. Look like, if you tell me that game or that game or that game or that game, or even that game is the best game of the weekend, a lot of these are very compelling matchups that are believable. Iowa State, Houston ranks at the top with the best of them there. The Cyclones have won 4 in a row. They do got, they've got to go and play against Houston on the road here. This is the only scheduled matchup between these two teams. Milan Momcilovic is back. I think ISU GP only has one loss with him in the starting lineup. I think that's the stat there. So with him there, he's a good 3-point shooter. This Iowa State team, just like Houston, Otzelberger has never had a team that has been this offensively compelling, and they're not quite as good as they were to start the season. The first month or so, the Cyclones, going off of what happened in Maui, and then even beyond that, they were rolling with a top 10 offense overall. That's dipped down to 18 in PPP, adjusted for efficiency at KenPom right now, but really good opportunity for a really, really good game here. I'm excited for it. I will be in transit in New York. I hope I can get in front of a TV at some point here, because that's a 2 Eastern tip ESPN top 10 matchup. And if Houston wins, I'd say in terms of seeding, these teams still got plenty of time to figure all this stuff out. But Houston winning would really increase its chances against a quad one opponent to eventually maybe get on the one line. That's still within the realm of possibility for the Cougars. And then Iowa State, I don't think it would have to run the table. I just don't think that's going to happen. But it's still Iowa State trying to play to the 2 line is still possible. And if it was able to beat Houston, it would jump to the top of the list, or a top 3 win of value for any team in the country this season, because Houston is so highly ranked and they would do it on the road.
One last thing before we move on. I would take issue with something Kelvin told you, and that's that Houston is great right now and has been great for years because of the time he spent in the NBA. I think Houston would be great regardless, as long as Kelvin was coaching. But I do agree that time in the NBA is incredibly helpful for quote unquote college guys, just to open your mind up a little bit. I can't tell you how many coaches have told me similar things to what you quoted Kelvin saying, specifically Brad Stevens. I remember having a conversation with Brad Stevens very early when he left Butler to coach the Celtics, and he was coming through Memphis, and we were just sort of talking after the game. And one of the things he said was you just don't know what you don't know. You were taught that this is it was interesting that the specific thing Kelvin mentioned was there's a different way to guard ball screens, because that is exactly what I remember Brad saying. This is the way you're taught to guard this ball screen, and this is the way you do it, and you don't even think about it anymore. And then you go into this new league, and that works, but have you ever tried this? You ever done it this way? You think you're a basketball coach, and you realize you don't really know as much as you think you know, even if you were great. Brad Stevens coached in back-to-back national championship games out of the Horizon League, and got to the NBA and immediately said, holy God, I didn't really understand the sport as well as I thought I understood it. And I think Kelvin was great before his time in the NBA, but every coach I've ever talked to who has spent time there and then come back to college, they tell you they benefit from it. So I'm certain that he did.
Real quick. So go, and if you haven't read the court report, it kind of details some of this, but I didn't expand enough on, or as much as maybe I could have, when Kelvin was talking about, he met Greg Popovich in 2002. They were coaching for the United States men's national team for that world championship that year. Kelvin was at Oklahoma, but because him and Popovich and Mike Montgomery, who was the coach at Stanford, that team was coached by George Karl. They were together all the time, obviously, and they would just walk every day. They would walk for 2.5 hours around San Francisco, and they became really, really good friends, and they're still friends to this day. They're still very close. Kelvin went to some big soiree for Popovich, I think he said last year in Napa. He had some really good stories to tell. And but he recalled the day that he gets the call from Popovich the day that it ends at Indiana. And that's, as an aside, by the way, this is understandably so. It's a very, very sensitive topic for Kelvin Sampson. He doesn't like talking about the way things ended at Indiana. So I more approached it with him on the NBA side, and then he invoked the Indiana stuff. It's a if you know Kelvin, it genuinely bothers him, a lot of the stuff that happened there, not just how it ended, but in general. And so he was framing it okay, all this happens. It's a devastating day for me. A reckoning comes. Popovich calls me, offers me a job. I accept it within an hour. And then I think it was 2 weeks later, he flies, he gets his life together, flies to San Antonio. He's going to be an advisor for the Spurs. He gets there, he goes to get his bags, and then he just, he made it sound like Popovich surprised him at baggage claim, like he's waiting for him there. The Spurs had a game that night. They go right to the practice facility, and when he walks in, one of the assistants is running the scouting report, but he's hearing the team. The way that was even going, the way that they were preparing for the game 7 hours before tip or however long it was, and the way they were going through the scouting report and going over film, it was just immediately grad school. And as he said, my head was just spinning there, and he got obsessed with just relearning how to coach the sport. So I hear your point. I would be more inclined to even agree with you, but he was insistent, like, I would not be this. Going to the NBA changed so much about how I run a program, how I coach basketball, and we are here because of what I did for basically 6 years. So it's a cool and unexpected plot twist, and college basketball is way, way, way for the better that Kelvin Sampson decided not to continue to chase that dream, because he believes he would have. He actually told me, I think I would have eventually gotten a head coaching job, and then I would have been fired. Like, that's just kind of what happens in the NBA. And instead, he's an all-timer there at Houston.
Yeah. And we touched on this earlier, but just to put a button on it, he had the best team in the AAC for 5 straight seasons before Houston left the AAC. He won 4 conference championships. The one year he didn't was a bunch of COVID cancellations, imbalanced schedules. Wichita State had a higher winning percentage, but nobody, even Wichita State, thought Wichita State was the best team in the league that season. It was Houston. And then they moved to the Big 12, and year 1 last season wins it by multiple games. Right now, he's on pace to win it again by multiple games. Like, that's incredible stuff. I know the Big 12 doesn't rate as the best league in the country this season, but that is the league he moved into. He took a program that was dead when he inherited it, built it into an AAC monster, and then moved it into the toughest league in the country and treated it more or less the same way he has treated the AAC. That in and of itself is Hall of Fame worthy. And Houston, Iowa State should be awesome on Saturday. Let's move on to Maryland. Beat USC Thursday night to extend its winning streak to 4 games. In a related note, Maryland coach Kevin Willard gave Norlander an interesting quote about his star freshman Derik Queen. We'll discuss that next. First, let's get a word from our partners.
Gives it to Jenkins for the championship. A 16 beats a 1. From sweet to elite to the Final Four.
So Maryland beat USC Thursday night to extend its winning streak to 4 games. Final score, Maryland 88, USC 71. Maryland freshman Derik Queen, 13.17 rebounds. And that, Norlander, is my way of setting you up to talk about what Kevin Willard told you about his star freshman. What a quote. Give us the quote.
Okay. The exact quote was, if he was European and white, he'd be the number 1 pick in the draft. That was essentially the quote. This has caught on a little bit there. Willard's, I don't think people realize like how funny Kevin Willard is and how much of a smartass he is, in a really good way. He shows it sometimes, but not a ton. And I called him up earlier this week. I said, listen, I'm finishing up this story on Derik. I was at Maryland for the UCLA game last month, and we got to talking. And before we get to the quote, you talk to coaches, you write stories, and you can get good ideas of how they feel about these players based on how they talk about them, how long they talk about them, the way they describe them. And oftentimes it's always good. But what was interesting about this one was called up Willard, picked up, and then quick hi, how are you? Hey, I'm doing this thing on Derik, and boom. I mean, he is off and rolling, and it's like 2.5 uninterrupted minutes of raving about Derik Queen, and I haven't even gotten my question out yet. So that just gives you an idea of how highly he thinks of Queen, who has become one of the best freshmen in the country. Like, when I went to the UCLA Maryland game, part of it was to talk to Cronin and do a UCLA thing, but part of it was like, you know what, Queen's got a real chance here, and he's on the rise, and he might be able to turn into like a top 20 kind of pick. He's probably there at this point, and he is the centerpiece of one of the best starting 5s in the country. Maryland is at this point, I tagged the story with like I'd have them as a Final Four sleeper right now. If they keep this up, they will shed that label. They will move from sleeper to contender in a hurry. They've got this crab 5 starting 5 moniker, which is phenomenal. The Crab 5 is incredible. If there, I think there's merch out there. I might have to purchase a Crab 5 shirt. But to Queen specifically, yeah, man, really, really awesome young man from 45 minutes away. I don't know if he would be the number 1 pick in the draft or be disgusted if he was European and white, but he does have, come on, you've seen him play, Parrish. He's got a craftiness about his game. He's classic, not ultra athletic, plays at his own speed. And guess what? His own speed works. He can play the point. I didn't include a quote in the story that Willard also gave me because it was a little bit redundant, but he said, I could choose to play Derik Queen at point guard right now. And if I did that, we would not drop off in how our offense is run one bit, and I would not have to dumb down our offense. He can play point guard for me at 6'10" right now. So he's a fascinating player. Maryland's a really, really good team. This is the best team since the 2019-20 season that was canceled by COVID. That Maryland team was trending toward like 3 seed status overall. And this is the 18th year that Kevin Willard has coached college basketball. He's never had an offense that has been this efficient. In fact, it's starting to pull away in terms of comfortably being his best overall offense. And Queen's not the only reason. I mean, they got a really, Gillespie's a really, really good player. Queen and Julian Reese, the way that they play off each other is pretty awesome. I didn't think the game against USC would be ultimately that close. Musselman's getting it done a little bit, but it was road game, cross country. Maryland had been hot. That game kind of went the way that I thought it would. And Queen again had himself an awesome night last night. He had one move in particular near the baseline, which was just absolutely gorgeous in his own kind of way. He finished overall with 13 points, 17 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 turnovers, and a block. He's tremendous. Unquestionably a top 5 freshman in the country. There's no doubt about it. We know where Cooper Flagg stands. But as Maryland continues to move up, like he could get into that top 2, top 3 overall. I love seeing stories like this, and I love watching this guy play. I would rank him among the 4 or 5 most must-watch players in the entire sport.
He's been great. I submitted a mock draft to CBSSports.com 2-3 weeks ago. I had him 23rd in that one, perhaps too low, but I do not think he would be the number 1 pick in the draft, regardless of his citizenship. Or,
never let a good quote get in the way of the facts. Never.
Regardless of his race or citizenship, I do not think he would be the number 1 pick in the draft. I'll give NBA front offices a little more credit than that, but he's terrific. And I, like you, love the way Kevin talked about him, and that would mean something to me if I were an NBA front office member.
Yes.
Like you can always tell what somebody thinks about somebody else by how much they will or will not say. Like most people aren't just going to trash other people, right? Particularly their own players. But how much are you eager to talk about them without me even really having to get you to talk about them? And as you tell the story, you didn't even have to get a question out before he was just raving about Derik Queen. And then I have not spent time around him, but like everything I've heard is exactly what you said, which is just an impressive young man. And I do believe that athleticism is very important in the NBA, like very important, maybe the most important thing. But it's not a deal breaker if you're not an athlete. The best player in the world is not an athlete. The 25-year-old that the whole world freaked out when he was traded a few weeks ago, not an athlete. You can be great in that league without being a great athlete. I would prefer you to put your chin on the rim, but you don't have to do that to be a high-level NBA player. And that's why I would not be dismissive of Derik Queen as an NBA player simply because he's not going to test as well in some of these things that they're going to want to test him at the combine, because he can play basketball, and that's pretty obvious. And we'll look up in 5 years, and he'll be, I would assume, a meaningful player on an NBA roster.
Yeah. Couple more quick things, then we can get on to previewing this awesome weekend. Willard and I got to talking about just what you brought up when he gets to sit down and meet with GMs. He said teams are going to fall in love with him. And I would agree with that. He's just going to do well in the interview process. He is someone who multiple people that I talked to kind of on background for the story said, when I have conversations with Derik, like he'll sometimes talk to me and respond like in casual way or in like funny way. Like he's a really funny guy as well. And he'll say stuff like that my 40-year-old friends won't even say. So he's going to go through that process and really win over a lot of GMs, as you know, wherever he lands by the time we get to the combine time, whether he's projected Willard says he doesn't think he'll fall out of the top 10. Whether or not that's the case, whatever. Top 10, top 15, top 20, whatever it is, he's only going to help and increase his chances there. And another thing, I had a couple quotes from Kevin in there on. He called him a positive magnet. He said every single day he's in a great mood, like understandably so. College players can just be a little bit, they can be a little bit, if you're watching on YouTube, a little bit like this, just up and down, teetering sometimes. There we go. It's just not the case with Queen. In fact, Queen had brought up to me, like, he didn't have a good game at Washington, maybe. And he was kind of like harping on himself for that. And he was like, it's, I was getting a little down, and my teammates were like, nah, man, like, you were fine. And like, you're the one bringing us up right now. Like, he has a way about him that is very natural, very charismatic. And I can't wait to see what Maryland does over the next month. This team is a lot of fun. And I hope we get another moment like Willard laid out to me where he said there were multiple. I was like, give me one instance. Cause he's like, it's every week. Like this 20-year-old can just chap my ass in a way that, my grown friends don't even know how to, and he knows how to say it in the same exact tone. And Queen had blown an alley-oop opportunity where he was on the passing end of it. It was a turnover, and Willard was like, all right, you're out. Come sit down. And the exchange is in the story, but it was basically like, what was that bleeping pass? And then Queen immediately was like, you would have thought it was a great bleeping pass if he actually scored. And then Willard looked at him in a beat, and he's like, you're right, but sit down. And they just got like this rapport between them. And Willard told me, like, we can have that because he's mature. Like, he gets it. He comes at me and I'm never offended, and I can go back at him. And it's just an awesome dynamic between, yes, a coach and a player, but also a guy who's approaching 50 and someone who just turned 20 years old. And last thing, the reason why there might not be more Queen top 5-10 buzz right now is he is a freshman. He did just turn 20, so his clock is a little bit behind. Whatever. He's an awesome college player. I'm loving watching him. Admittedly, I thought when he committed to Maryland, I thought he was going to be a 2 or 3 year player. That's not going to happen. He's been too good, and it's a bummer because I'd love to see him stick around and really, if he came back as a sophomore, like, he'd be an All-American and could be in contention to be National Player of the Year. But I think the stock is rising too high too fast, and I think he's off to the league this spring.
Yeah, I would assume he's going to hear enough positive stuff to make him compelled to first enter and then remain in the 2025 NBA draft. And, Kevin says he won't drop out of the top 10. I had him 3 weeks ago, 23rd. I'm not interested in the debate. I will just say this. For anybody who thinks Kevin is like wildly optimistic, just understand, if Matt Painter or anybody else would have said on February 21st a year ago that Zach Edey's going to go in the top 10, you would have probably laughed at that.
Yeah.
But he went 9th. So, as always, we'll see. You ready for the final 4-1? We have expert picks to deliver to the masses.
Well, they're picks.
Mine are expert picks. You can call yours whatever.
Honestly, I know we got a break, and I know you're doing the tease. I have no idea how I did last week. I don't think it was good. You're making me believe that, like, maybe you're coming off a 4-1 or 5-0 week. So let's break, and then you can tell me after.
All right, I'm gonna tell you after. Let's get a word from our partners.
Let's go.
We're under the lights in Jeddah. I think we're in for a show. A brand new circuit for 2025. This is proper racing. The first of 6 doubleheader weekends this season.
Now it's time for the final 4-1 presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. This is where every Friday we deliver the best expert picks anywhere available on the internet outside of Katie Mox's. We respect Katie Mox, but every other prognosticator, we hold ourselves above them as the standard. We deliver expert picks every Friday. Last week I went 2-2-1.
Okay. How bad was I don't think I did well. What did I do?
You went 1-3-1. You were really struggling last week with your expert picks.
What was the push? Do we know?
Not open up your mic if you remember what the push was.
He doesn't even know.
I got to look it up myself. Hold on.
I tallied it last night in the middle of USA versus Canada, so I was slightly distracted.
Okay.
I was in the
By
middle
way,
of
congrats to Canada.
Congrats
Got
to
me actually
Canada.
interested in hockey in the middle of February. Love to see it. That was good.
Congrats
stuff
to Canada. I didn't know what was happening. I don't really follow hockey, and I was
Yeah.
like, so if the United States wins, I didn't even really understand the format. I was like, if the United States wins this, what state did we play next? Like, is it Virginia next? Like, if you beat Canada,
All right, take it
do you
easy over
advance
there.
to? Is it Utah?
Take it easy.
Do you play Utah? It is out. What a world we're living in right now.
I know. Nada, what was the push? Do you have it?
I do not have it right now.
Oh,
Okay,
my
so
God.
we're just going on blind faith that one of these games pushed. Okay,
Yeah,
it's better than a loss, so I'm going to take it.
I had a drink in my hand. I was watching USA Canada. The way I interpreted it, there was a push in there somewhere. So updated season records.
Yeah.
I'm 33-40-2.
Oh God.
And you're 34-39-2.
All right. That's surmountable, by the way. I need to be clear about this. I can be side mounted and surmounted as early as this weekend.
I might do both. I might
By
get
the way,
crazy.
look at
I'm
going hotel room situation. Like look at this. I don't know. It's a filter. It's a light situation. I don't know. I look like I have a tan. It's like 4 degrees in Ann Arbor right now.
You look like you've been in a sauna.
This is not.
Have you been in a sauna?
I have not. I look like I have sunburn. What is going on?
I tell you, man, I see that hotel room, and I know that's just a very normal Ann Arbor hotel room and a very normal hotel room, but you don't know how jealous you get of hotel rooms when all you do is stay in New York City. Because, buddy, they put you in a box.
I know. Oh, I'll be in New York City Saturday night, and I'm familiar with that. There's a great comment in the YouTube chat right now from Philip Gaynor. Says Matt looks like he's being interviewed on a morning show by GP as a CEO that just tanked his company. I guess that's a good call. That's actually a really funny comment. I appreciate that. Let's preview the weekend and pick some games. There are too many good games to all put in the Final Four in one. Lay it on me. What's game one?
Game one, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Coach, they had to take a stand because they kept wanting to fight everybody all the time at Michigan. Remember when Michigan just kept wanting to fight everybody all the time?
I do.
Shouts to John Sanders. I hope he's doing okay. You can watch it on Fox. Kim Pomp's got it. No, I updated this morning. We've got an actual number. It is Michigan minus 2.5.
Just so we're clear, you're good now, but like you dropped out for like 6 seconds when you were doing that before. It's just.
I don't know what happened.
It's all right. You're good. I can hear you now, but you like your body was still there, but you're like your audio like went into another dimension. But I understood what you were saying. I got you. All right. I'm here in Ann Arbor. Hello. Good morning. I will be at this game tonight. I've never been to Michigan for a game. I've never been to Ann Arbor until yesterday. Got some Zingermans, by the way. Legit campus spot. Like all these places, all these colleges, they got 1 or 2 or 3 spots where it's like, oh, you got to go there to get this and you got to go there to get that. And sometimes you go and, lines are insane and it's always packed or whatever. I got lucky. It wasn't that busy. You go in there, they got quotes from Oprah and Obama and all these people that have gone in and tried it. Zingerman's in Ann Arbor. If you've never been, if you didn't know, now you know. I didn't know. Now I know. Shouts to Nicole Auerbach, who was a Michigan grad and gave me all the tips there. So that was good stuff there. Spent some time with Michigan State and spent some time with Michigan in the lead up to this game. Izzo is convinced that this is going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4 points either way. The trends for Michigan would indicate that because they've won 6 in a row by 4 points or fewer. That ties the all-time record. If tonight's game is won by Michigan by 4 or fewer, it will set a record for 7 in a row. No team has ever done that. Although, as the Michigan staff reminded me yesterday, if you go back, like the Indiana game had the heave at the end. Rutgers, it was like a 9-point margin, and then they like barely got it into 4, but the game was effectively won. So they're aware of the streak, but they were quick to defend it. If you actually look at this, like we've had a couple of these games well in hand in the final minute or two. Regardless, the margins are the margins, and I'm interested to see how in the world Michigan State tries to counteract the 2 7-footers, Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. I'm interested to see how Michigan keeps Michigan State out of transition. You know, Jace Richardson, this is a big spot for him. This is an awesome rivalry game. Michigan State's going to need to have success on the glass, and whether it can or not with its size, I don't know. These are two top 15 teams. Since Izzo became coach, GP, Michigan State is 5-2 against the Wolverines when both teams are in the top 15. So this is game number 8. We'll see if Izzo can continue that trend, but it's an awesome game, a really good rivalry. You've got Izzo in year 30. You've got Dusty in year 1 at Michigan. There's been well over 100 credentials that have been signed for this. This is a Raftery, Robbie Hummel, Jason Benetti game. Got to see Raf yesterday. Raf will be at a game that we will hit on in just a moment later in the Final Four on CBS on Sunday, but good to see him yesterday. Can't wait for it. I will pick, is it 2.5? No, give me Michigan State inside that number. Maybe Michigan wins, but I will take Sparty inside the number. Izzo's team shows up, plays well. Jaden Akins has his best game in a while, and Sparty's inside the 2.5.
Anytime a number is within one possession, that's a situation where you can trust a building, and you're choosing not to. You're choosing not to trust a building.
I've done that many times this year, and it's worked out okay for me. Check the records. Come on.
Dusty was asked, Dusty May, of course, the Michigan coach, first-year Michigan coach, who is in a position to win the Big Ten title in year 1, and thus by extension in contention to be the CBS Sports National Coach of the Year for the second time in a 3-year span at 2 different schools. Yep. Amazing. He was asked about this Michigan State rivalry earlier in the week. Do you see that quote?
I actually did not.
It was like press conference setting. They were asking him, as somebody who grew up in the traditional geographic footprint of the Big Ten. Now the geographic footprint of the Big Ten is like the entire country. But once upon a time,
I think it goes into Canada, actually.
Well, give it time. Give it 6 months.
Yeah.
Give it 6 months. And Dusty was like, yes, of course I grew up watching Michigan State. And it was always my dream to be a part of a Big Ten rivalry like this, unless, of course, I could be the head coach at Indiana.
That's what he said?
No, he didn't say that.
I was like, okay.
But that have been a headline if he would have, wouldn't it?
Oh, man.
He did not
hear about
say that. He did not.
Dusty isn't. I got to talking to Dusty yesterday about this. He's a pod listener. Not going to be happy with that.
He did not say that.
He's coming after you, Parrish.
He did not say that. He said he grew up watching it, and it was almost always on national television, and it was almost always 2 programs competing for something, contending for championships. And now here we are again. Hey, whoever wins this game will go to bed tonight alone and first in the Big Ten standings. That's a fact. You probably need to know that before you get into the building.
I'm aware of that. Yeah, I mean it's a big time game, and that's the first of 2, but it's compelling. You haven't picked the game yet.
I trust Dusty May, and I trust the building. So it's Michigan minus 2.5. What are we even talking about? Plus, I don't think Tom Izzo is going to be listening to the pod and downloading into.
Tom Izzo is not listening to the podcast.
Tom Izzo's not going to have the audio of this in his phone and rub it in my face someday. No. Okay, but Dusty might. So I'm riding with Dusty.
He could have it before tip-off. It's entirely possible.
Okay, well, let the record show. I'm picking Dusty.
I might dip in on shoot around in like 6 hours, and he might come up to me and be like, "What the hell's Parrish talking about? Can you tell him not to say that on the pod?"
I just picked Michigan minus 2.5. All right. I took Michigan minus 2.5. Game 2 Saturday noon Eastern. Number 6 Tennessee at number 7 Texas A&M. It's inside AC Law Arena. You can watch it on ESPN. Kim Pom's got it. Tennessee minus 2. Ooh, I'm spotting a trend.
Which is?
Another building trusting situation here. Numbers too small.
Huh?
You got a home.
You can't even name the building.
AC Law Arena?
Yeah. What was the building formerly known as?
AC. It has forever been AC Law Arena. As far as I'm concerned. What are you talking about?
Dude, most underrated matchup of the weekend. Awesome game. This could be ugly in the best way. 2 top 5 defenses. You talk about Michigan's like Michigan State. How well will it shoot on the road tonight? It doesn't shoot well from 3. How often will it shoot? It might not freaking matter, man. Texas A&M, it's just it can't shoot. This team is 300th in 3-point accuracy, 267 from 2-point accuracy, 304 from the foul line. All those ratings, obviously, as always, courtesy of the great Ken Pomeroy and his website. They can't shoot.
Well,
and they're a 2 seed with a 20-6 record, and that's because they are beasts and just ferociously hungry on the offensive glass. They rank the country in offensive rebound rate. Tennessee's a different kind of team to go up against. These teams have not met this season. I know A&M's got the game at home. I didn't plan for this to be the case, but I'm going 2 in a row.
Oh wow!
Road underdog to cover, but this one it's a straight up situation here. Give me Rick Barnes, give me the Vols, win on the road, straight up, and I think it's going to be like, I'll say it's like 66-62 Tennessee wins.
One day when we get some time this offseason, I'm going to sit you down and explain to you the phenomenon of home court advantage in college basketball.
I'm aware of it.
It doesn't sound like it.
I'm aware of it.
It does not sound like it. You have picked against 2 top 15 teams at home.
I've picked against 2 top 15 teams to cover at home, sir.
Your legacy will not be that of a building truster. I know that.
And I can live with that. Let me be very clear about this. I can live with that. As someone who trusts the actual people doing it more than the structures themselves. No. Yes, I'm good with that.
That's crazy. A&M is 5-1 in his past 6 games, but coming off of that loss at Mississippi State. I guess we were in studio Saturday night, CBS Sports Network.
Okay.
I don't know what it was. I was in studio the night that Texas A&M lost at Mississippi State. I know that.
Memory. How does it work?
Whenever that was, I know I was asked to talk about it, and it was like, how big of a deal is this? I was like, those are 2 very good teams, and all that was a quad 1 loss on the road to a very good team. Like, I'm unconcerned about it. So, yeah, I'll take all seriousness. I think these are comparable teams, Texas A&M and Tennessee. And anytime you got me comparable teams and I can get a number as little as 2, I'll just take the home team. Texas A&M plus the 2 at home inside AC Law Arena. Game 3 Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Oklahoma State at number 23 Kansas inside TJ Gassnola Fieldhouse. You can watch it on CBS. That's America's most watched network. It's the network of stars. Ken Pom has it. Kansas minus 16, and I don't know if anybody needs a game against Oklahoma State at home right now more than your Jayhawks. I don't know if you heard, but man,
my Jayhawks.
Yes,
Jayhawks I ranked lower in the preseason than you. What is this game, by the way? It is a loaded week. I know the game is on CBS. There are so many good games. Oklahoma State at Kansas.
Oh wow! I hope our bosses don't hear this. I know who I work for. I know who I work for.
I think our bosses would respect us picking the 5 best games. We've got a good CBS game. Oklahoma State, Kansas, 16-point line.
I think our bosses would respect us highlighting a Big 12 showdown on America's most watched network between the preseason number 1 team that is spiraling. Can Hall of Fame coach Bill Self get this thing turned around at the age of 62, or are we watching a career start to go the other way? You'll get your answer Saturday on CBS, America's most watched network. It's the network of stars.
This is the only this is the only game on CBS Saturday. Okay. It's 4:00 tip. Everything else is CBS Sports Network. Yeah, I will. The line is huge.
If you want to promote a Fox game over the CBS game, go ahead and do that. If you want to promote Severance over Landman, go ahead and do that. But I know where I work.
I know you're a suck up. I get it. I'll take Kansas minus 16. Give me the Jayhawks to cover 16.
They didn't have me on a billboard above the Fox office building in Times Square. It was above the Paramount building in Times Square.
If any listeners have an issue with GP picking Oklahoma State over Kansas over the likes of, I don't know, any other game, let them know. I'll take Kansas.
You know who doesn't have an issue with it? Best Barnes. I bet you Best Barnes does not have an issue with it.
The wonderful Best Barnes who does programming for CBS, by the way. Kansas minus 16. Give me the Jayhawks.
Kansas is 2-4 in February with 4 losses to unranked teams. Since February 1st, 65th at Torvik, 163rd in offensive efficiency. Can't score. I talked about this with Strongjaw earlier in the week, but in the first 20 seasons at Kansas, Bill Self won 17 Big 12 championships, never finished worse than 3rd in the league, never lost more than 6 games in the conference in any season. In year 21, lost 8 league games, finished tied for 5th in the Big 12. In year 22, right now, already lost 7 league games, currently tied for 6th in the Big 12. So the way I framed it, just factually, no opinion here, just factually, the 2 worst years of Bill Self's career at Kansas happened to be this season and last season. What do you make of that? I'm asking you that question. What do you make of that?
I make of it that they've just gotten to a place where they're not. I think it's obvious when you watch the team. They're just not connected as a team. They're not invested, and it's a major issue. And they need a major roster reboot. It's a lot of it falls on Self, frankly, and he can't be. He must be just beside himself at this because it's just so outside of the expectation of what they've done there. But yeah, it's just you can't fake chemistry, and for whatever reason, this team certainly doesn't look like it has it. I don't know if it can regather it. I don't know. Bill Self is probably calling every single person that he knows that he think could possibly help him with the situation to try and reverse course on this season. But Kansas is they're a JAT. They're just another team, and that's almost never the case under Self.
And that's what we were saying about them even before they went to BYU and got their brains beat in and just quit. And it must be, like, all jokes aside, really confusing for Bill right now, because think about this. Most of us will never be as good at anything as he has been at what he does, right? Like, most of us will never be as good as anything as he has been running a college basketball program. And suddenly last season, something happens to you that's quite literally never happened to you. Like, you lose more games in this league than you've ever lost. You finish worse in this league than you've ever finished. And you actually verbalize to the world, even before the season is over, this will not happen again. Like, I'm paraphrasing here, but the impression that I was left with was, all right, I didn't see this coming. I don't know how this happened. I just know it will not happen again. If I needed a wake-up call, now I've got it, but this will not happen again. Not on my watch. And then it happens again, and it's worse. Like, it really must be, his head must be spinning right now. So I've talked about this in this way in a variety of places, and I've had a handful of Kansas fans reach out to me, and here's something they say. GP, stop saying that the worst 2 years of Bill Self's run at Kansas are the past 2 years, and instead say the worst 2 years Bill Self's ever had in Kansas happened to be when he had teams built around Hunter Dickinson. Are you comfortable with that, blaming this on CBS Sports HQ's Hunter Dickinson?
Not entirely, but as someone told me earlier this week, Dickinson is a stat getter, bucket filler, but he doesn't affect winning. Like, you just go back and look at what Dickinson has done, and his production doesn't translate to big scale winning. But I'm not going to put most of it on Dickinson. But the Kansas fans are shifting now from DeJuan Harris to KJ Adams to Hunter Dickinson. They're just kind of
I think it went KJ Adams, DeJuan Harris, and then to Hunter Dickinson. But we'll get back to KJ Adams, I'm certain.
Yeah,
we always do. Yeah. We always do. No, I of course it's not just Hunter Dickinson, or at least I don't think it's just Hunter Dickinson. I don't think it can ever just be one thing, or it's rarely just one thing. But Kansas fans aren't the only people who think that the Hunter Dickinson. I had Kansas fans last season saying they'd rather Hunter Dickinson not come back to Kansas. And as recently as 3 weeks ago, you could find some data points that would project him as a first-team All-American. So it's just sort of a weird deal. You got this guy who is incredibly decorated and accomplished as an individual statistical monster, but the wins and losses aren't where they should be, and maybe you can connect those things. I'll lay the points with Kansas. Did you pick it yet, or are you?
I did. I laid the points with Kansas. I got Jayhawks minus 16.
I didn't know if you were going to not pick it at a protest.
I'll never pull a Parrish and actually cowardly not pick my way out of a game. I'm gonna go Kansas -16.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Game four.
I hope this is okay with you.
This one actually is compelling. This is also a CBS game. Let's go. I'm psyched.
I hope you're okay with this. I'm sorry if I didn't clear it with you in advance.
You don't have to clear anything with me. I just saw the game and I was like, what is it? I didn't know what was going on. I saw the game and I was like, okay, let's roll. Let's shoot some birds. I'm psyched. Let's go.
When I am doing the CW Eye on College Basketball podcast, we'll start promoting CW games. I know where my paycheck comes from. Game 4 is Sunday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, number 13 Purdue at Indiana, inside Tom Cree Hall. He deserves it. And I saw you in the court report, by the way. I saw you. I saw what you did. You were like, Indiana ain't barely done nothing since they lost Kelvin Sampson.
I gave the record. I gave the data points, as you would respect. I gave you purely facts.
I wanted Tom Crean in all caps bolded in there, except for the time Tom Crean won 2 outright Big Ten titles.
I mentioned 2 titles. Didn't mention Tom Crean. Shouts to Tom Crean.
Disrespectful. It's disrespectful. You can watch this on CBS. It's America's most watched network of stars. Kim Palm's got it. I don't know if that's right. What my notes say -4. Nada's got it Indiana -6. So let's
yeah, let's go.
Let's see where we're at. Let's see who was drinking more last night, me or Nada.
There's no way it's Indiana -6. There's no way.
I got it Purdue -4. Okay. Nada was drinking more than me last night.
I wasn't looking at the YouTube screen. There's no way it was Indiana -6.
Well, like I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself.
Just putting up random spreads on the screen just to throw Parrish off as we do.
Because here's the thing, I trust him more than I trust me. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, shit, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe it is Indiana -6. I don't know.
Indiana -6. Oh man. I know that like a few weeks back I teased the AI Bob Knight Indiana Purdue song and we haven't played it yet. Mm-hmm. I don't have it available yet either. It's also absolutely laden with curse words. So we'd have to be kind of careful. If you have not found it yet, try and go find it. It's just it's so good, man. It's like the one good thing that's come out of AI. I will go Boilermakers on the road in this spot, either -4. They've been down as of late. Mark me down for Painter and his team getting right. I know Indiana fans, you're tired of losing to Purdue. As the song says, I'm not here to F around this week. Now, you may be, but I'm not. Painter gets it done. Braden Smith has a good game. Boilermakers win, and they cover.
I know our buddy Seth Davis is on a mission to get the NCAA tournament expanded.
Don't get me started.
And
don't have the time.
My counterpoint to that would be that Indiana is among the first 4 out. Right now, it's February 21st, and according to Jerry Palm, Indiana is first 4 out, which means Indiana is still very much in NCAA tournament contention. Even though Indiana has sucked so bad that their fans couldn't stop asking the administration, chanting to fire their coach, who happens to be an alum. And then the coach was finally like, you know what? They're right. I'm out at the end of the season. I can't do this anymore. And that team can still make this NCAA tournament reasonably. That's how much we don't need to expand the NCAA tournament.
Correct.
I know we will. And when we do, I do not think it'll ruin everything, but it's wildly unnecessary. If Indiana can still reasonably make the NCAA tournament in a year in which its fans hate its team and chanted to fire its coach, and the coach said, okay, cool, I'll leave, then we need to shrink the NCAA tournament. You shouldn't have coaches quitting in the middle of the season and still having teams good enough to get in the tournament. It's outrageous. I'm taking Purdue because I'm 42% Boilermaker. That goes without saying. Yep. But they have dropped 3 straight. Now it's at Michigan State, home to Wisconsin. A lot of people would drop 3 straight against that. But this is something I just sort of noticed when I think Wisconsin shot 90% from 2 against them. And I went and looked at the 2-point defensive field goal percentage. We touched on this, but I've got the numbers exactly now. In 2023, with National Player of the Year, 7'4" Zach Edey in the middle, They only allowed opponents to shoot 47.2% from them inside the arc. That ranked 53rd nationally. Last season with Zach Edey, it was 47.7%. That ranked 67th nationally. So the past 2 years with Zach Edey in the middle, 53rd and 67th. Not elite, but, 53rd and 67th. Now, opponents are shooting inside the arc 55% against them, and they rank 329th. They go from 53rd to 67th to 329th. We knew they'd miss Zach Edey. It's not ideal that they miss him that much around the rim, but yes, I'll take Purdue at home. Or on the road. We'll lay the points. What's game 5?
Doesn't sound like a building truster to me. All right. Game 5.
Can't trust a building when the own fans hate the coach.
All right.
That's my rule. You trust buildings up until the fans inside the building hate the coach and beg for him to get fired. Then you don't trust that building no more, particularly if you are a decent percentage Boilermaker like myself.
I'm in full March mode here. Coming to you from Ann Arbor this morning. Chilly Ann Arbor. We'll head out to the airport tomorrow morning. Fly to New York City. Ideally land safely. Who knows in this country? And make my way to the Garden. Duke, Illinois. Non-conference game on February 22nd. Let's go. Talked with Brad Underwood and John Shire yesterday about this. Just the motivations behind doing it. This is just had to include this game, man. We need more of this. Both Shire and Underwood are going to try to continue doing this. Not necessarily against each other, but they both want to make sure that their schedules include a non-conference game against a high major opponent in January or February, moving forward every single year. Bless these men for this. This used to be a feature of the college basketball season. We talked about it a year ago on the pod because Gonzaga and Kentucky revived this trend in 2023 or 2024. Calendars, how do they work? And now that we are getting this, and I think Shire even said at his presser yesterday that he's got an opponent in mind and they're trying to work it out and get all the details down. So that's awesome. If we can get more of this, that's wonderful. The reason why we don't have as much of it, one, coaches schedule more scared these days than they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. Conferences have expanded. You have more league games. Television networks are more, there's more restraints around doing this, but it can be done. And we've seen it 2 years in a row. So it's awesome that we're going to continue, ideally, to get this moving forward. With 2, 3, or 4 programs, the more the better. It's a nice little spice here. You get it at the Garden. Both Shire and Brad are absolutely just psyched for it. Shire told me that the Garden has apparently messaged that in terms of anticipation, however people associated with Madison Square Garden are selling the tickets, whatever. He said it's as good as anything in recent history. And by the way, the Garden's got a couple of awesome games. I'll get to the other one in a second. This game is Duke -9. According to KenPom, Illinois has been ravaged by illnesses. Underwood told me yesterday that for the most part, it's going through the entire team. They're not out of it yet. And when you get the sickness, it's like a 4-day deal and it's bad. Now they're getting toward the back end, but it hasn't been all the way through here. Getting Avicic back from mono has been key, but he's still getting all the way into shape. But Underwood said he was, I think he said it was in practice yesterday. It was their best practice vibe-wise in a while because of what he brings to it. 9's a big number. Kind of feel like Illinois is going to step up and get inside that. I mean, this could be the Cooper Flag show, and he goes off and has the kind of game where we look back and, whatever team he's playing for, 5 years from now, it's like, remember the first time ever Cooper Flag played at the Garden, he did that. Maybe it will be that. I don't know. But I think Illinois is going to have enough. KenPom's got it -9. I'll be interested if the actual line is that big. Give me the Illini to be in that number, but Duke to win.
I saw somebody ask in the chat, okay, cool. Duke wants to play in the Garden in February, non-league game, but why Illinois? Is it as simple as it's a rock solid, very good Big Ten program coached by another great coach? Or does it have something to do, in addition to that stuff, with it is John's home state school? John is from Illinois. Does that matter?
I think that's part of it. There are multiple factors here. Underwood, when Gonzaga and Kentucky did this a year ago, he went to his ops guy and said, I like what they're doing. I want to do that. And so, the people, and programs that are more, some head coaches take on scheduling head on, but other people handle that stuff and they confer with the coach. Are you good with this? Would you play this? So that word was out there. Shire wanted to play a non-conference. I mean, I remember talking to Shire few years ago about him wanting to play good non-conference games and maybe get one later in the season. It's actually kismet for Duke that they happen to have this game. Now, Illinois is not a top 25 team right now, but it's landing at a time when the ACC's never been worse. So it actually benefits them in a good way. And the Garden knew that the likes of Illinois, like Underwood wants to play there. If he can get Illinois there every year, he'll try, whether it's the Jimmy V or whatever. He wants to get Illinois in the Garden if he can, as often as he can. So there were enough people involved in scheduling that knew that these two teams were willing to do it. They linked up in the summer, and they had to go to their conferences and say, we want to play this game, which is a little bit of a lift for the ACC and the Big Ten to abide by it. They did it. I'm glad everyone made it happen. Let this be a lesson to have us. If we can get 2 or 3 of these next year and moving forward, it's cool to see this. And both those coaches told me, NCAA tournament, like we're going to play in the tournament. We're going to be at the Garden, non-conference game. Like it's going to have that tournament feel. Dare I say it might feel like an Elite Eight game. So that's basically the long and short of why we got here and why it was Illinois.
On Illinois, you saw after the game the other night, they didn't even shake hands because it was just like out of respect for your opponent. Like we're sick, man, and we don't need to get you guys sick. I can just tell you, 2 weeks ago, WWE SmackDown was here in Memphis. And we went. My wife could not go because she had the flu. She was like in the bed, really sick. I subsequently got it. Both of our little guys got it. We're still not right. And that was 2 weeks ago. I still cough nonstop. My wife is still coughing nonstop, and we've been on all the flu medicines and everything else. So I don't know whether it's worse than normal, better than normal, just as normal, whatever. But like, it's not surprising to me that Illinois got hit and it's still lingering, because I'm not a basketball player, but for 2 weeks I have not felt right, and nobody in my family has felt exactly right for 2 weeks. So all that said, that's still a really talented Illinois team with a high ceiling, I think. And that number's too big on what is technically a neutral court. I know Duke alums will fill up the Garden. That's among the reasons Kay wanted to be in Midtown Manhattan a lot. There's a lot of Duke alums that live in New York City. So I know it's going to be a Duke crowd, or at least I assume it's going to be a Duke crowd, but I'll take Illinois plus the points.
Our poll question today was which of these 4 teams, even though maybe it could be Maryland, but who will win the Big Ten? Illinois not on the poll question, but I wanted to at least hit that back. Michigan 41%, Michigan State 34%, Wisconsin 22%, Purdue just 2%. Obviously, tonight's game at the Chrysler is going to go a long way toward that. Quick rundown on the weekend, then I got to bounce out of here. Really just a stacked Saturday, as usual, as has been. Just having an awesome season here, man. And I'm soaking it up by the week because the tournament's coming with a quickness. Oregon at number 11, Wisconsin gets it going on Saturday. That's a noon tip on Fox. Oregon's probably, it's heading to the tournament, but it's done some good work recently to firm that up. Wisconsin, can you get the job done here and keep climbing? Mississippi State at Oklahoma, 1 Eastern SEC Network. Oklahoma is teetering, man. Got to win that game. Home game against Mississippi State. Can't mess around. Cannot mess around. That's a very, very urgent game for the Sooners. Ole Miss plays at Vanderbilt, 3:30 Eastern SEC Network. Vanderbilt in the tournament field, but can you beat the Rebels? Can you really get closer and closer to this is going to happen? Georgia plays at number 1 Auburn, 4 Eastern on ESPN2. Bulldogs are not in the field, I wouldn't think, right now, and that's an unlikely situation there. It's just gone the wrong way, but notable nonetheless. It's the number 1 team in the country. Clemson is at SMU, 4 Eastern ACC Network. SMU, if it can beat Clemson, okay, maybe we can start talking. Just keep an eye on it. Kentucky at Alabama, 6 Eastern ESPN. Obviously, just an awesome game. Bama, it got just rolled by Missouri. Actually, 2 SEC games, Kentucky, Bama, and then Missouri at Arkansas, 8 Eastern on ESPN. Shouts to Mizzou, Dennis Gates. They set a record for most points in a game, and since they got into the SEC against an SEC opponent, that team is rolling and looking really, really good. Meantime, like Alabama, it's a tough spot. It's a difficult game, but they just they're taking on some lumps as expected, and they've got the toughest schedule down the stretch of anyone. Can the Tide put up a really, really impressive, strong game in its return against Kentucky? These two teams, played a really good game earlier this season. And now, the Missouri game was a race to 100. This one really might be a race to 100 again. Kentucky obviously still missing its guards. And then just a few more. St. Mary's Gonzaga, 8 Eastern ESPN2. I don't know why, but St. Mary's and Gonzaga aren't wrapping up the regular season by playing each other. It feels like it's the first time in like 16, 17, 18 years that's been the case. Kind of weird. Gonzaga's next two to wrap the regular season happened on the road. So this is senior night for the Bulldogs. 10 Eastern, CBS Sports Network is a tremendous Mountain West game. San Diego State at Utah State. Aztecs are a bubble team, but damn would they do their resume huge wonders if they could pull off that road win. And then BYU looking good at Arizona, 10 Eastern, ESPN. That's your Saturday slate. And then I'll be at the Garden. I'm going to stay over in New York on Saturday night. That game will be done late, Duke, Illinois. And then this is just wonderful scheduling. UConn at St. John's, noon Eastern, Fox on Sunday. I'll be there. I just can't wait to take in two games. It really feels like March, GP. 2 games at the Garden in less than 14 hours time or whatever. I'm looking forward to that. And then I mentioned I saw Raft. He actually is going to fly, and he'll be on the CBS game. Ohio State at UCLA Sunday, 3:45 tip. Raft and Bird will be on the call for that. So that is your Saturday, Sunday preview look ahead. We'll pod Sunday. It's to be determined whether I'm going to logistically be able to do it at the Garden or if I got to take the train home, and maybe it's going to be a little bit Sunday night, a little bit later after I get home. But it's coming. Just stick around and wait. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And when we go live, if you're subscribed, you ding that bell, you'll get that mobile alert, and you can watch as we go up.
You say that, but I don't know for sure. Hey, in all seriousness, did you mention George Mason VCU?
I didn't, and I didn't see it. So if I didn't, apologies. That's a huge A-10 game. Is that tonight?
No, it is Saturday, 4:00 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. I knew you wouldn't let me sneak that into the Final Four and one.
I would have gladly taken Mason VCU in the Final Four and one. That's a tremendous A-10 game that has actual stakes behind it, because the winning team in that one will have a resume that is of large quality. So that did slip past my radar, but that's an awesome game.
Both teams are 21-5. Mason's 12-1 in the A-10, VCU 11-2 in the A-10. This game could decide who's the 1 seed in the A-10 tournament. And by extension, I mean, this is a fact at this point. Either Tony Skinn or Ryan Odom is going to win an A-10 title for the first time this season. And this game tomorrow on CBS Sports Network could determine it. So big game, 4:00, CBS Sports Network, George Mason at VCU. They only play once this season. It happens to be in Richmond, so probably advantage Rams, but we'll see. George Mason has been one of the, I know, a little bit off the radar because they've never had a number next to their name, but that's one of the more surprising stories in college basketball this season. Let's get out of here. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle, legend, Hook, Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. More of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So please do that. We'll talk to you again on Sunday. Till then, take care.